A big greeting to all of the Necro mains, the Warrior mains, and, most importantly, the Thief mains. It's time to actually have a little bit of a look at the specializations. Antiquary, Ritualist, and Paragon. Well, the first one in the video here, I bet nobody saw this one coming. I don't know what I expected from the Antiquary, but it certainly wasn't this. Let me tell you that, okay? We are going full meme spec territory. ArenaNet has gone completely... They've gone wild. They've gone crazy. Like, the main mechanic of this spec is that you send out a script that pilfers random artifacts for you that you can then use to battle your opponent. And yes, one of them is an electric guitar. Another one is a giant hammer. And then another one is basically, you know, a dancing Skrit hologram that taunts your opponents. And then a Skrit holding up some kind of weird fish relic. This is absolutely insane. Very different from a lot of the Thief roleplay, I guess. It's really, really different compared to what we're going on there. And it goes even crazier with the utility skills that we'll get into a little bit later. The utility skills are called double edges, and you can basically spam them theoretically, but if you use them, they have a chance to backfire if you use them again before they come off cooldown, and the earlier you do it, like, you know, the more cooldown left over, the more chance to backfire. And the way they describe it, I've actually got to come out of the video just to talk about this. This is crazy. This is how they describe double edge. They can break the rules of regular combat, allowing them to reverse a dire situation, or at the very least, take themselves and their opponents out in a blaze of glory. When I read this for the first time, I was like, what is going... This is some crazy stuff, guys. Okay? If you like a little bit of RNG, a little wackiness, a little goofiness, you're here. But yeah, you know, you're definitely going to be enjoying this Antiquary. I mean, we just got baited. I don't know what to tell you. And look at this artwork, guys. Like, we've got cards, which I guess is kind of like the RNG element, but we got baited by that. We were expecting Trickster, Gambler, Thief, Twisted Fate, Thief, Card Warlord, Card Wizard. What we got was Skrit carrying you a little treasure, and then you loot it. I mean, look at this guy. He's looking good, ready to go, ready to obtain the loot from the loyal Skrit, following you around. And look, I will admit, I can imagine people not being super happy with that and how this roleplay is. I would really urge people to see the, you know, at least wait and see the gameplay and like the full roleplay of the spec with all of the abilities and the traits and stuff. But yeah, this is looking absolutely unhinged. I will admit, I love stuff like this. I think it's hilarious. Definitely different to anything we've seen before. I don't think we've ever really had a meme spec in the game before, right? Like, maybe you could argue that Bladesworn is a little bit silly, a little bit goofy, you know, with the whole, like, teleports behind you, like, meme. But even that, I think, is relatively serious with the gun saber, right? Like the gun blade or whatever. This is on another level of insanity. But don't worry, okay? We can kind of tone it down a little bit with the Ritualist. Not really much of a surprise. This is one of the ones that ArenaNet basically already confirmed a while ago. And this is going to be kind of a standard Necro spec. You're going to have a new type of shroud that lets you summon these spirits. And these spirits are going to do a bunch of stuff. It's going to be kind of a power DPS or support spec. And that's not terribly surprising. Ritualist always kind of had that element there. But yeah, so you're going to have spirits that can do some boons. This is the Spirit of Wanderlust that like slams down a big AoE, does some CC, all that kind of good stuff. You can see this spirit here applying some protection, right? This one's doing some healing as well. A bit of Aegis in the mix there as well. You can see being applied to that Char and the Necromancer themselves. And yeah, you get basically, the way they've handled the spirits is that you can basically summon up all these spirits while you're in Shroud. And then you can basically choose what target they go after by using the auto attack. You can see that little green bolt the Necromancer's firing out there. That's essentially what's going to get targeted. Is like who you end up hitting with that. So yeah, that one's looking really cool. And for all of the Guild Wars 1 fans out there, there's a lot of inspiration from Guild Wars 1 here. Specifically, that the utility skill for this are weapon skills. right? So you know, very similar to Guild Wars 1, you're actually going to have unique mods. This is going to be kind of a unique modifier spec, so you can give people like special bonuses and all that kind of cool stuff. And that's not actually super surprising. We've seen them do a couple of unique mods so far, right? And like very powerful effect. It looks like they're really going to go all in and try to make sure these elite specializations have a really strong identity, and using some, you know, special modifiers, extra mechanics to kind of give them that flavor and give them that gameplay identity and how they actually play out there as well. So I think Necros are going to be happy with this. Not super surprising again to see the support, because especially with the transfusion rework, like Scourge has been in a really weird spot, I would say, ever since they started playing around with transfusion. So I think this is going to be one of those specs that's going to fit really neatly into the current Necromancer support package, basically. And they're going to lean into that with the utility skills, obviously the traits, and of course the spirits themselves. So very flexible. And, you know, bear in mind, you are always going to have access to all of your spirits, basically. So even if you go for a DPS option, you're probably going to have a bit of utility in there as well, which is kind of cool. So kind of similar to how Scourge is now, or how Firebrand is. So I think really exciting. Very, very cool. Good RP. I think this is something that people have wanted for a long time. The spirits are looking cool as well. Kind of the stuff from Cantha in End of Dragons there that was summoned by the speakers. So it looks pretty damn cool. And yeah, I mean, obviously Necro, Necro's pretty good. Summon your army of spirits with a little different backpacks for the different things that they do. And well, I don't know, stay tuned for more. And finally, I love that they tried to replicate like the Omega, like jacked Paragon guy they had. And again, of course, they used the Norn for that. But, you know, look, the wings are looking good. The wings are looking good, guys. Okay, you know, the Paragon is now here as well. The spear-wielding warrior, though, of course, that's a Janthir Wilds thing, not necessarily associated with the elite spec. And this is exactly what you'd expected, really. You know, it's not... No surprises here, really. You're going to be yelling at your allies. You're going to be buffing them up, right? You're going to be kind of this... you know, physical damage dealer, hybrid support thing. They're absolutely going to be... I mean, look at this. Look, this looks like a healer to me, right? This guy is juicing everyone with some pretty powerful, motivating words, right? Going on there. You've got commands. They're basically a little bit like shouts. And the TLDR is that they're giving Warrior some more F skills, basically. And that makes a lot of sense, right? Like, Warrior has definitely struggled with this. It's been fairly limited, very focused around these burst skills. And the way Paragon's going to work is that you use burst skills that juices up your resource called motivation. And you spend that motivation resource on using extra buttons called chants, which are probably going to have a wide variety of effects. Offensive, defensive, utility, all that kind of good stuff. We'll see exactly how many of those we're going to get, but I'd certainly expect at least an F2, an F3, and an F4 being added to the Paragon, and we will see when we get there, of course. But yeah, no crazy surprises there on Paragon. We knew this one was coming for quite a while. We knew it was going to be on the Warrior 2 because of that, you know, that really cool image that they posted of the Ritualist and the Paragon at the same time. Also, I want to point out, Warrior mains, okay? You guys are honestly eating good on this one. We don't know for sure yet, but this ability here may be the elite skill. And again, we'll get into this later. This is an unbelievably strong effect. The elite skill basically commands your allies to not die. So they can go to 1 HP, but they cannot actually fully die. That is a crazy strong effect. Very similar to Distort Share, actually. But you might be thinking, wait, isn't it like just strictly worse than Distort Share? Well, not necessarily. There are actually a decent chunk of effects in the game that can't be invulned, right? Like Distort doesn't necessarily work on every damage event, right? A really good example of this would be some of the damage that Ceres does, for example. You cannot invuln it, right? But this will essentially allow you to tank stuff that even invulnerability won't save you from. And this, again, is a group effect that can be applied. So an unbelievably powerful elite skill, which, you know, I honestly kind of love to see it, right? I think that elite skills should be pretty powerful, right? Should have a strong thing. And I do like to see that we are seeing a bit of like very potent kind of elite specialization identity and being packaged into this, rather than just like, oh, you give boons. Right, I think we've all been a little bit sick of that. So adding a bit of flavor in there, we absolutely love to see that. Yeah, it's fantastic stuff. It really is. And yeah, look, I mean, Like, I'm not sure if the thief mains are going to be lining up to buy the game using Moira Furling, but honestly, I don't know. Maybe you should be. Look, I'm just going to say, guys, let ArenaNet cook. Like, on Friday, I'm expecting to see some crazy fireworks from all three of these, to be honest. They are looking interesting. That's for sure. And I think actually really cool mechanically. Antiquary is still very much up in the air. Really, really wild stuff there. I don't know exactly how that's going to work. They give us a couple of details, but it's the one they tell us the least about, actually. We're going to get into that in just a moment. But yeah, Paragon sounds really fun mechanically. I think that's going to be something that Warrior players are really going to enjoy. And indeed, people who want to try out the class. Same for Ritualist. You know, it sounds really, really cool. And yeah, look, buy the game using Moira Furling, guys. Hell yeah. Okay, I'm sure there's a bunch of script wizards out there. And, well, listen, it is your lucky day. And, of course, Friday, it's coming up. I will be covering this. I will be uploading it. I obviously am going to be uploading my analysis on all of the deep dives for the Antiquary, for the Ritualist, and the Paragon on YouTube. So definitely subscribe for that. And indeed, stay tuned because I will be doing that live here on Twitch as well. So for the, the engaged viewer, you can actually be a little bit ahead of the curve. So definitely be sure to wait for that, check that stuff out, and definitely watch along too. It's a whole lot of fun. I really love to see Trig and CMC, maybe even Roy at some point on stream. They're always an absolute treat to watch, so I'd highly recommend stopping by the Guild Wars 2 channel to see the reveal this Friday. But anyway, let's go ahead and kind of get into some of the details that they give us a little sip of here. And once again, I do think they nailed the artwork. You know, for better or for worse, the artwork does look really cool on all of these, I think. I think the one that's actually maybe the least inspiring is actually the Ritualist one. I really like the aesthetic here of this Paragon, right? The spear is here. Slightly weird choice with the helmet, I guess, seeing as, you know, he's not wearing one. And, you know, Paragons in Guild Wars 1 don't really wear helmets, but I guess it's to kind of like match the warrior aesthetic, I guess. But yeah, this looks super cool, right? You've got the wings there at the back, the spear going off the kind of the bright orange yellow glow. Very, very cool stuff, in my opinion. Riches does look really, really nice in the game. The artwork's all right. You know, I'm not, you know, it's not that exciting. It's green, right? You know, that could be anything. It could be any Necro, really. It's just a little bit green. And yeah, the Antiquary, I'm not gonna lie, this is just so funny. Look at the script. The script is, he's looking so happy with himself. He's like, oh look, have the treat, have the pilfer. I have pilfered for you. Now take this artifact and crush my opponents. That's what the script was saying there, guys. Yeah, I'm on it, boss. You got it. Once again, a masterful bait by ArenaNet to give us the cards, right? Just to tease the cards and then just like bust out the script at the last second. We absolutely, we love to see that, guys. We absolutely do. But anyway, let's get into it. The Antiquary improvisational procurers. The balance of black market trade and above-board commerce in Lion's Arch has tipped towards legitimacy in recent years. But look, that's all about to change. And the Captain's Council has banded together with several smaller factions to claim a place in the Tyrian Alliance. But the discovery of Jam Theory artifacts has started a gold rush as explorers hustle to procure rare and valuable items that no living culture can lay claim to. And yeah, this is kind of the background story. They're giving us the RP. This is going to be a fun part of the expansion, in my opinion, is you're going to discover like where the characters in the game learn these new techniques from, and they've kind of built up all these little different stories from all over the world, and, you know, previous expansions and so on, of like how we came about these new forbidden elite specializations. The somewhat euphemistically titled antiquaries pride themselves on their scholarly appreciation for the artifacts that they acquire. Many even keep a few in their private collections, ready to impress colleagues at the tavern or blindside foes on the battlefield. And whether they're priory historians or pirates, Lion's Arch is still their favored nexus for trading and selling their wares and knowledge. Scrit happens. Antiquaries are the pinnacle of accomplished thieves. Look, guys, ArenaNet have said it here in black and white. This is actually what peak thief performance looks like. If you can't handle that, then I don't know, I guess you have to reroll. No longer stealing for material need and purely doing so for the fun of it, for the content. With the help of their loyal but not necessarily reliable script assistants, antiquaries can plunder precious artifacts from their opponents and turn their random spoils into improvised weapons. Antiquaries can even break the rules of regular combat, allowing them to reverse a dire situation, or, at the very least, take themselves and their opponents out in a blaze of glory. For the thrill-seeking player who delights in rolling the dice and adapting to any situation, no matter the outcome, look no further than the Antiquary. And here we are. Look at this. Look at this individual. Look at this specimen here. Press your luck. And this is where we're seeing some of this kind of gamba stuff here. And don't worry, there are ways to mitigate that gamba, but it does look that a little bit of randomness is kind of part of the identity of the spec there, which that is definitely going to be a polarizing mechanic. ArenaNet has been very aggressive with removing basically all randomness from the game, especially in competitive modes, and I think they will have thought about that, so PvP players don't sweat too much. Like, you know, Trig and CMC, they care about PvP, they're into PvP. I imagine there will be pathways to kind of make this a more standardized approach within the competitive modes. So, acquire new artifacts with the skill Pilfer, which replaces steal, summoning a script assistant from underground to plunder from your target. After a successful pilfer, instead of stolen skills, antiquaries get the choice of using one of two randomly selected artifacts from across Tyria. These artifacts range from a Cryptus turret that fires automatically at any nearby enemies to a Chak organ that produces a shield, protecting you from incoming projectiles. Traits give you finer control over the artifacts you receive, from guaranteeing that you'll get one offensive and one defensive artifact each time you pilfer, to re-rolling your artifacts for new ones at the cost of initiative. So yeah, this is like the key thing here, is that instead of one steal skill, you're going to get two, and you're going to be able to pick one or the other, depending on which one you're potentially looking for. And again, yeah, we saw a couple. There's like one that's doing this kind of like reflective barrier. There's one that's doing like this taunt with the script hologram, right? There'll be all sorts of like crazy stuff that you're going to be able to do there as well. And yeah, you are going to have a couple of build options that will allow you to mitigate. There'll probably be some utility skills that also allow you to do some re-rolling, kind of similar to Mercy on Deadeye. So you can kind of have a bit more control over what you're actually getting there, because like having like pure RNG is going to be a little bit of a fiesta. Now, the thing is, you know, we say that pure RNG is going to be, you know, not super bad, but then we have this. So the Antiquary's new skill category, their utility skills, it is a new set of abilities called the Double Edges that can be used repeatedly even while on cooldown. The catch: there is a chance for the skill to backfire when used while still cooling down, often with detrimental effects to the user. The chance of the skill backfiring decreases the closer it gets to completing its cooldown. So players who are more risk-averse may want to wait a little while longer before attempting to use a double-edged skill again. I mean, this is hilarious. I think there's going to be some unbelievably funny situations where, you know, you're in PvP, the enemy thief like pops their elite skill 4 times in a row and just high rolls you and just obliterates you. This is going to be really interesting to see how this actually looks in terms of the balance, to be honest. Like what the percentage shards is going to be like what the scaling is going to be like with the cooldown. I can imagine this being funny. You know, very, very funny until it happens to you. Or if you're playing Thief, you know, if all of your skills basically backfire on the first attempt, you know, that's going to be like, well, it's over. You know, it's absolute despair. Of course, depends on like how punishing the backfires are, and indeed how powerful the skills in general are. Because this is very rule breaky, right? This is extremely rule breaky, and that is going to influence like how powerful these things can be. Because they, you know, they're not going to want the variants to be very unfun. Like, always bear that in mind. But yeah, sounds interesting. And to be honest, the Antiquary is probably the elite spec I am most interested to see out of these three, because it is so wacky and it's so out there. I have a pretty good idea of what Ritualist is going to look like. I have a pretty good idea of what the Paragon is going to look like. But I have no idea what Antiquary is going to do, like what type of abilities it's going to have, right? And like what, especially the utility skills and the elite skill, like what elite skill is this class going to be given? We see this really funny clip here, kind of at the end, where you're summoning like mass scripts. I'm just like, if this is the elite skill, this is kind of insane, especially if you could spam it. Like look at that tiny script just shrinking down into nothingness in the background. There's a lot of potential here, guys. A lot of potential. And yeah, a huge surprise. A massive curveball, in my opinion, from ArenaNet. So yeah, definitely stay tuned to see that one. That is going to be... And I definitely get that people are maybe not going to be super happy with the RP there. It's certainly not what I was expecting. I was definitely thinking that it's going to be kind of the grungy, edgy, explorer, Tomb Raider, artifact, retriever, Indiana Jones kind of meme. And well, you've got the hat. So you have got that. But mechanically, it's very much a little bit different there. A little bit of a secret sauce. But look, let them cook. Let them cook, guys. Let's see what we're doing on Friday and see what the actual mechanics are like in the gameplay, right? And of course, the remainder of the RP. So let them cook, guys. That's what I gotta. That's my final word, I guess, on the Antiquary. Next up, it's gonna be the Ritualist. Spiritual successors. Ritualism is one of Tyria's oldest professions. Of course, Guild Wars 1, guys, remember that. The practice originated in Cantha, where humans discovered that spirits could be summoned from the mists and bound to a ritualist's will. In practice, this is traditionally a respectful partnership between ritualists and ancestral spirits. But as the speaker's influence spread in recent years, so did their hastily adopted methods of forcibly binding spirits. Not good. Necromancy and ritualism have long been considered separate disciplines, but as open hostility between the speakers and the Jade Brotherhood cools and Cantha becomes one of the Tyrian Alliance's strongest pillars, ritualists have formed ties with necromantic communities across Central Tyria, Alona, and beyond. Ritualism will gain new practitioners. Networks of political support and shared resources will ensure that responsible traditions are favored over cruel shortcuts to power. We love to see that, guys. A little bit of ethical raising the dead. Fantastic stuff. Preserving a legacy. As you might expect, the Ritualist draws heavy inspiration from its Guild Wars counterpart. We'll go into more detail during this Friday's live stream, but our design goal was to capture the key elements of the profession and translate them into Guild Wars 2. Registered trademark. And to achieve that, we started with spirits. Depending on their skill and trait selections, we expect Ritualists will be able to specialize into supportive builds or aggressive power-focused builds. Yeah, and that, I think, is a good thing. I think it's good to... A lot of these specs kind of have a slightly hybrid approach. I think that makes sense. Like, you do want to enable multiple playstyles and multiple types of builds. And in general, giving specs boons is a good idea with how the game typically plays out, especially because, you know, if you give a spec a bunch of boons, like, how bad can it possibly be, right? You get in there and just, like, destroy everything in the open world. It's going to be fantastic. That giant crab is not going to stand a chance. It's interesting that it is going to be because, of course, there's no weapon with this. They can't add a ranged power weapon, and Necro doesn't really have a ranged power weapon. A sword, kind of, but yeah. It does exist, but this is going to be a ranged component though, right? Because those spirits like fire out their little bolts that you can target, and the shroud itself is ranged. So this could be really cool actually for a power, if you're a big fan of power necro, because this does mean that you're probably going to have like some ranged capacity. Not all of your damage will be ranged. You're still very likely to use weapons such as spear and greatsword and so on. But a component of it is going to have some ranged component, which I think players are really going to enjoy. And on the support side, yeah, necro support has been in a weird spot. Transfusion's been reworked like 7 times at this point, and I imagine they were probably thinking about Ritualists a little bit while they were doing that. So I think when we see these traits, when we see these abilities, we're going to go, oh, yeah, that makes a whole lot of sense. We've already seen in the trailer that there's some Aegis going on there, there's some protection, very likely stability, I'd say, good chunk of CC, there's going to be healing package into the kit, which again is actually uncommon for Necromancer, seeing as a lot of the support on Necro supports comes from traits rather than actual abilities. So giving it a proper support core, especially given that the weapon skills on utilities are very likely to have both offensive and supportive options. Yeah, I can see this actually being like a proper, flexible, non-weird necro support build, which is kind of like where Scourge is at. Like, don't get me wrong, Scourge is actually very strong. It's very strong, but it's also a bit odd with how it works, you know, and you can see that with kind of what they did with Transfusion, right? They basically had to say, right, okay, this trait basically needs to be literally all of the support for this build, kind of, like in one trait, which is obviously kind of undesirable. But anyway, spirits will be summoned while in Shroud. So yeah, very similar to how Necro works now. And the Ritualist will also gain access to weapon spells as the utility type. For those who aren't familiar with weapon spells from Guild Wars 2, they're shareable, beneficial effects with similarities to stances and venoms. Some are applied for a specific duration, and others are applied as stacks. So yeah, this is basically how it is. When you go in Shroud, that's where your spirits are going to be. You're going to have this auto attack that kind of focuses the spirits onto the target you hit with it, and then it's probably going to be the 2, 3, 4 skill of the spirits, and the 5 we maybe don't know about yet, or maybe it's the 2. It's hard to say, right? Like you know. It doesn't really matter, right? Like where the button is, right? Or like what, you know, in Shroud. Yeah, we know some of these abilities, but they've kept a couple of little secrets from us, so we'll have to wait until there. And it is worth noting is that the Shroud does tank damage as well. You do soak damage. It's not like Harbinger Shroud. It's actually more like kind of Core Shroud or Reaper Shroud there as well. And yeah, then the weapon spells, yeah, they're going to be a little bit like stances or venoms. Right, so you're going to have a buff that you apply to your allies that will have some kind of effect. Or it will be like charges of stuff. Like, they're going to bring back Splinter Weapon, guys, okay? Let's not pretend they aren't. It's absolutely iconic. Everyone loves that in Guild Wars 1. That is definitely dropping here. And yeah, I think it's going to be really cool because they now have this flexibility. They probably will have some boon component attached to this, but they've now got a lot of flexibility to do some pretty wacky stuff. And really go out there with some really interesting effects. And again, just really give the Ritualist this really, really powerful identity, right? So that will be cool. Big role play here as well. While weapon spells were ally targeted skills in Guild Wars 2 and in Guild Wars 1, in Guild Wars 2, they behave a bit differently. The Ritualist will always receive the full effect of the skill, while up to 4 nearby allies will receive the effect at a reduced amount. For example, one skill may last for 5 seconds on the Ritualist and 3 seconds on their allies. Yeah, this is basically, they want to be careful here with they want to give themselves a couple of knobs to tweak when it comes to balance, right? They want to make sure that they have ways to make this like potentially non-problematic. When you're dealing with unique modifiers, you have to be a little bit careful, to be honest. And yeah, a smart decision, I would say, to not go with ally targeting. Ally targeting, in my opinion, it's not good in this game. The game just doesn't really have the UI support for ally targeting, to be honest, outside of PvP. It works pretty okay in PvP, but outside of PvP, it's a bit mediocre. With how it works, especially in PvE, to be honest. So I'm not really the biggest fan of that. It's a cool idea, but you'd need customizable UI. It would be completely fine if you could like move the squad UI to the middle of the screen, so you could, actually, very easily select people within the UI. But trying to click people in like a giant blob is wacky, to be honest. Like it's like unbelievably wacky. But yeah, that is the situation. But yeah, really cool. They've added Ritualist to the game. I think the roleplay is looking good here. Mechanically, this sounds pretty interesting as well. I really can't wait to see what all these do, particularly the elites, right? The elite skills have got me excited, guys. There's some really powerful effects, really interesting effects that we've seen them do so far. So, elite weapon skill. Here we go. You can see some of the spirits firing out their little projectiles. The Ritualist Shroud behaves similarly to the Necromancers. It's fueled by life force, and damage taken drains the life force. Once life force is fully drained, the player will exit their Shroud. I wonder if you get the damage reduction. They haven't specified if you get the damage reduction there, so maybe it's a bit like Spectre and you don't have that, but maybe it is. Like it's not entirely know. It says it behaves similarly, but not exactly the same, so we'll have to wait to kind of confirm that detail one way or the other. Inside the Ritualist Shroud, Ritualists will have access to 3 skills that summon spirits: Anguish, Wanderlust, and Preservation. Of course, all named after spirits from Guild Wars 1. Each of these skills has an initial effect activated by the Ritualist, after which the spirit will appear. When a spirit is summoned, it performs a powerful attack before lingering in a more passive state. So a little bit like nature spirits on Ranger. So they have like this slam effect, and then it kind of does something. During that time, the spirit will periodically attack nearby enemies. These attacks can be focused on a specific enemy by targeting that enemy with the Shroud's basic attack. Otherwise, the spirits will simply attack an enemy that is in range. Spirits will usually disappear when exiting Shroud, so that you do need to be in Shroud to get these effects. However, there is a trait that allows them to stick around longer for a cost. That's going to be probably one of those more higher impact ones, kind of the GM angle, I'd say. But yeah, it's cool. Again, you know, we're continuing this design of having these Grandmaster traits be very high impact. Very similar to kind of what we saw with Antiquary, right? Being able to like re-roll. That's probably going to be a GM trait as well. Re-roll your treasures, you know, using initiative. Like that type of stuff that really changes up the gameplay and how you interact with your profession mechanic, I think is really exciting. For example, when activating Anguish, the Ritualist performs an initial strike on the target that inflicts cripple and vulnerability and marks that target to take additional damage from your summoned creatures. Yes, that includes minions. Look, you got some minion synergy. Look, I predicted some minion synergy. I was kind of expecting them to go a little bit further. I guess Ritualist is a little bit minion themed because you like summon stuff. But look, I was expecting like full minions, but at least we're getting a little bit of a minion support being out of there, guys. Minion monsters rejoice. You can summon an army of minions and an army of spirits. When Anguish is summoned, it fires a barrage of projectiles at the target. They deal additional damage against controlled enemies and for each condition on the enemy. Fun fact, for those who haven't played Guild Wars 1, that's kind of similar to how it worked in Guild Wars 1, by the way. So that might give us a couple of clues. Not really for the other ones, but it is similar because Wanderlust is like a CC. It was that in Guild Wars 1 as well. And Preservation was like a supportive, like regeneration-oriented spirit. So they're all in theme with how they were in Guild Wars 1, which is kind of cool, I think. Just a nice little bit of consistency. And of course, we're going to have to find out about that 5th ability in Shroud a little bit later on. I'm sure it's quite something. But yeah, that's kind of cool. There's a lot more to cover about the Ritualist Shroud, as well as some other trait interactions and the weapon skill utilities. Yeah, we didn't know. They have no teas. No teas. No weapon spell teas whatsoever here, actually. So yeah, stay tuned for that one. We're going to have to find out exactly what's going on there. And now, of course, we come to the Paragon. Okay, we come to the Paragon. Unrelenting protectors. Elona, land of the Golden Sun. A once opulent dynasty and triune of nations scarred by war, pestilence, and the machinations of divines and dragons over the centuries. In times of crisis, the nations of Elona could count on its most steadfast and inspiring of warriors, the Paragons, to serve as an unyielding phalanx against their foes without and within. In the past, these spear and shield-wielding fighters, were a favored specialization among the storied Sun Spears. However, the practice faded into obscurity after the second coming of Palawa Joko, who saw the Sun Spears summarily crushed and twisted into the Mordant Crescent. The inheritors of the practice eventually re-emerged in the years following Joko's demise. I actually like this type of roleplay because it's like, it's contextualizing the passage of time, right? Because, of course, you know, we beat Joko and then time moves on and the game says, oh yeah, like a year has passed, but this is like a consequence of that. This is fun roleplay. Like, I do like how these elite specs are weaved into the world and how they kind of, these are emergent, right? They're actually adding like, oh, this is why you can be a Paragon now, right? Whereas previously they just kind of said, yeah, you know, you went into Maguma and you fought a mushroom and you're a Reaper now. Nice. Like, you know what I mean? They did a little bit of lore in POF and EOD. I'll give them that, right? But I do like this. I hope they've got this in the game as well. And there's like a really good reason for this. And they do like some little quests, little collections, right? All that kind of fun stuff. I think that'd be pretty cool. But anyway, today, Paragons are still known for conjuring golden ethereal wings and shouting, bolstering chants and commands to empower their allies and demoralize their enemies. Hoping to expand this tradition beyond Elona, some Sunspear Paragons have begun offering their expertise to those willing to answer the call. All right, so let's get down to business. How does this work? Commanding respect. The Paragon is a staple pillar of Guild Wars 2 lore, and its elite specialization carries on the traditions of its original iteration. While the spears that we're introduced in Guild Wars 2 Jantha Wilds have already brought one of the Paragon's key aspects to warriors, this elite specialization further delves into their role as commanders and defenders of Elona, granting them the ability to bolster and aid allies around them with chants and commands. Their presence is so powerful that they can, in a moment of dire need, command their allies to not die. The "we will never yield" elite skill prevents the Paragon and their allies from falling below 0 health for a short time. And yeah, that is a mega powerful effect. Essentially giving you immunity for a certain amount of time. And again, because this isn't invuln, you still take damage. This will probably be weighted at a longer duration than you might expect. And again, if you're at 0 health, that means you're, once this ends, if you don't recover in some way, you're going to flop over, basically. But this is crazy strong. It means that you can do a really big aggressive push, go down to 0 health. Oh, just wallop the mic there. I hope you guys enjoyed that. Big aggressive push, big damage, and then you heal right at the last second, and you've kind of soaked and mitigated a massive amount of damage only to heal right at the last moment. This means that you can get around certain mechanics that even penetrate invulnerabilities in PvE, right? This allows you to basically take infinite damage in World versus World from a massive bomb, right? Crazy strong effect. Like, this is very comparable to the Troubadour Shared Distortion elite skill. In fact, it will be better than Shared Distortion, as we've kind of talked about, right, in a couple of different scenarios. Of course, worse in others, but, invulnerability and not dying are different, right? But this is a crazy game-breaking style ability. So, yeah, let's see how that one turns out, and I imagine this is going to be kind of part of it there. They love this kind of like, shoulders back, scream into the air animation in the trailer on the Paragon. They got a lot of value out of that one. Looks a little bit goofy, but also pretty epic at the same time. But anyway, what else has the Paragon got? Paragons build up motivation, a new resource whenever they use a burst skill. In addition to level 1 weapon bursts, Paragons gain access to chance, special burst skills that are available regardless of the weapon equipped. So basically, these do count as bursts, I assume, by the look of this. So they are going to have some kind of trait interaction there, which is pretty interesting, pretty notable. Because, of course, there's a lot, Warriors had this burst skill and kind of like the F1 interaction with, like, every trait line since the beginning of time. So a lot of interactions will be popping up here. But you're going to have them all the time. And again, this is what I'm talking about. It's going to be, you're going to have your F1 for your burst, and then it's going to be F2, F3, F4. Maybe even F5, right? They might go crazy and add a whole bunch of abilities to the Paragon here to spend all of your resource on. And yeah, again, you use your burst skill to build your motivation, and you spend your motivation on this Paragon mechanic. So this is basically another layer on top of what Core Warrior has. And I'm a big fan of kind of builder spender stuff, right? And now you basically have, your spender is now a builder. You've got 2 layers of builder spender on Warrior. We absolutely love to see that. And again, yeah, these chant skills come in 2 parts. The first part occurs immediately when you pop, and the second part, the refrain, is a pulsing beneficial effect. I mean, look, they're setting this up to obviously be a very powerful support core, but don't worry, it will do damage as well. I know you Warrior mains like to bash things. You will definitely be able to do that. In my opinion, right? But, obviously the identity of this Paragon is slightly support-oriented, right? They want to make that heal warrior a thing in all the game modes in a non-weird way, because they've tried to kind of do it with heal berserker and heal sworn, but, mixed results with that one, to be honest. But yeah, again, you've got some depth there, you've got that initial effect, so you get that immediate impact, and you're going to have that pulsing support there as well. Again, this is kind of important to have when you're trying to make a support spec, because you need to add multiple components to a lot of things. The way Guild Wars 2 works now is that because stuff is so power crept, you kind of need to have a lot of buttons to keep up with the current state of the game, especially as a support when you're competing with some crazy strong builds. 100%. So it is really important that they've done this. I think they've identified this issue very, very well. Like, Warrior needs a couple of extra buttons here to kind of make the stuff work. Refrains drain motivation and deactivate when it's depleted. So this is going to be, I imagine the more refrains you have up, it's going to be more of a drain, right? So you're going to have to be a little bit careful with how you end up spending this resource, and try to keep blasting bursts, like generating adrenaline is gonna be a big deal, right? Like big adrenaline, more bursts, more motivation. You get more of these instant effects, more of the passive effects there as well. In addition, the effects of Refrain become stronger depending on the current motivation level. Thus, they're most effective when the Paragon stays on the front lines of battle. Yeah, so you're gonna have this situation where your resource is draining, but you want to keep like getting out there, right? And you're getting more bursts off to refresh that. So you're going to have like more and more motivation, so these effects become even more powerful. So there's actually a lot of kind of mechanical depth that's going on here, right? Like, and it really encourages you to be aggressive, which I think is really fun, because a lot of supports are kind of passive in a way, right? You know, you kind of just, you know, you're chilling. I think this is kind of cool because it's really going to incentivize you to actually think about your resource generation, playing pretty damn aggressively, right? So that you are going to be able to continue to output your support, or indeed, like, you know, do damage and then use some of your resource to also support your allies at the same time. So I think really cool design, right? A really, really cool design in my opinion, with how this is going to go. And yeah, I feel very confident this is going to be cool. I'd say this is the one that I'm the most confident is going to have a really fun gameplay loop, and seems to be the most mechanically solid. Don't get me wrong, I think Ritualist and the Antiquary are going to be wild and really interesting, but from the information we have here, this one seems to be, Paragon seems to be very well fleshed out, right? Like really well kind of thought up and cooked in terms of the actual elite spec mechanics here. So that is, it's good to see. Paragons also gain access to commands, which function similarly to shouts. Yeah, so basically we've got shout v2 here, affecting either enemies or allies around them. Furthermore, command skills come with an additional property called an echo. Echo is a secondary effect that triggers a short interval after a command is used, granting additional bonuses. However, echoes can also be triggered early by using a burst skill, allowing skilled Paragons to strategically time their echo effects to turn the tide of battle. And yeah, this is also a really cool thing. Again, like, these elite specs need to be impactful. They've got to have layers. They've got to have depth. And they've been doing a very good job of this, in my opinion, so far with all of the elite specs. And we're doing it again here. You know, I shouldn't be super surprised, and neither should you. But yeah, this is another layer of depth. We have this motivation resource. We have the motivation interacting with the power. We have the initial effect. We have the pulsing effect. And we also have these commands, but we also have a secondary effect here to also think about with our burst skill, our profession mechanic, interacting with our utility skill. Yeah, cool. I like that a lot. And bear in mind, these commands are, they're going to be instant cast probably, but most of them, but they're probably not, maybe not all of them. Maybe some of them have a cast time. In fact, maybe they have a cast time because of what I'm about to say. But because they function similar to shouts, I think they won't. But I don't know. Look, I'm confusing you. I'm confusing myself now. You can think about this, right? You can start casting a burst skill, and then during the animation of the burst, pop your command, and then as the burst lands, you're going to get the first effect of the command, and then bam, you're going to get the bonus instantly. So this really incentivizes you to think, okay, I want to combine this command with this burst so we get an immediate power up, but it also, in a way, is going to give you some really interesting situations. Maybe you initially use the, okay, so let's say that there was a command that gives barrier or something, and the echo heals, right? You could think about it like this. You could go, okay, you use the command to give barrier, a big hit of damage comes in, and then you immediately use a burst skill to re-heal everyone. That's a really interesting interaction. And I'm expecting there to be a good chunk of depth with how you might actually interact with this, like how you might use your burst skills, your core warrior mechanic basically, combined with your elite specialization mechanics. Because bear in mind, it's more than that, right? You're going to use that burst skill. That's potentially going to juice up your motivation. You can then combo that with a chant, right, as well. So there's a lot going on here. And to be honest, I think this is exactly what the Doctor ordered when it comes to warrior. right? I think that Warrior has historically been way too focused around, oh, you know, I'm going to use my burst. You've been very locked into what weapon you pick, right? Because your profession mechanic is linked to your weapon. And that's cool. I got no problem with that. But it's good to vary that up a little bit. And that's why I think it is important. These chants are accessible no matter what weapon you've got, right? These commands are going to interact with whatever burst skill you're using, right? So you have that flexibility, you have that approach, which I think is pretty good, right? I like this a lot. I'm very excited to see what this looks like. Because, yeah, support warrior, I do like support builds. You know, I'm a big kind of support player, heal Scourge, heal Tempest, all the good stuff. So this is going to be another one to add to the repertoire. So yeah, Paragon looking very, very cool. And yeah, that's it. That is it. Let's stay tuned because on Friday, it's all going down, gamers. We're going to do a full deep dive. I mentioned this earlier in the video, but of course, we are going to be doing that here on Twitch, guys. You guys know me. I love this stuff. We're going to watch the stream. We're going to do like a 1 hour deep dive on every elite spec. Right, the thief mains are gonna be there. They're mentally broken. They're saying, please, ArenaNet, please say this is some kind of joke. Anything but the script. Please, I beg you, not the script. ArenaNet are gonna say, look, guys, the best I can do is you have 7 scripts. That's your elite skill, summoning 7 scripts. Get used to it. But anyway, I will see you guys then. I want to know, what do you guys think about this? Look, especially the thief mains, right? Because there's been some pushback against this, right? Like I have had some unhappy, discontent thief mains about the place. I want to know, what the hell do you guys think about this? What do you make of this? Do you guys like it? Do you guys hate it? Right? Like, are you waiting to see what's going to happen for the full reveal? Let me know. Of course, the same with the Ritualist and the same with the Paragon there as well. And, of course, that does mean next week we are getting the final reveal, and that's going to be for the Revenant, the Engineer, and the Elementalist. So, look, guys, the Ellie mains get trolled too. You guys get the final elite spec. Okay, the Revan Engie, they're very chill, but, you know, Ellie's... Yeah, dude, Ellie got peak trolled, no? Because they initially teased Evoker first, but then they dropped, like, Gale Shot and Luminary instead. So, Ellie's, you guys got trolled hard. I'll tell you. With the reveal order there. But listen, it's better late than never. It's going to be happening. It's going to be happening there for the Evokers, of course, right at the end of the reveal season, right before the beta. So if you think about it, you guys also get the, you know, a short tease period before the beta. So listen, every cloud has a silver lining, all that kind of stuff. But anyway, that's going to do it for me. Leave your comments below. Thanks for watching. Follow, subscribe, leave comments, like video, watch my stream, we do the reveals, subscribe, is the notification bell even still a thing? I don't even know, but if it is, definitely do it, okay, because you're going to want to see, one, when I go live on Twitch and YouTube to to do a full review of all the stuff, and when I upload the individual reviews as well, if watching a VOD is impossible, okay, and also, one more thing, you guys know it, okay, if you're hyped for your elite spec, then you know what? It's time. Buy the game using my referral link, guys. !GW2 in the chat. It will be linked in the description, in the comment section, everywhere. Click it. Awesomeness fixed it. Don't even need to disable ad block these days. Wow. What an incredible opportunity, guys. Click the link and give me money. That is my, it's a pretty good deal if you ask me. But anyway, that'll do it. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Leave your comments, and I'll see you next time.